Great. Hey, everybody. This is the broadcast for week 4. It is Tuesday, June 8th. So I'm going to go over some of the main ideas for this week using Blackboard and my little slide thing, except for I'm going to keep it in this mode, I think. All right, here we go. First things first. So you're finishing up this last essay, the digital literacy narrative, right? So you're revising that. I've made comments. I also sent out an announcement sort of addressing the main ideas that everybody should pay attention to. But I also made comments on your essays. So you're using all that, revising it for the last time, submitting the final draft. That is due by 11:59 on Tuesday. Here's the rest of the week. You're going to read an essay 2 assignment sheet, which is very broad, but you'll just to get the idea of it. So you're going to read that and ask questions if you have that, emailing me, sending me a message, that stuff. You're going to read the class 4 notes. It says complete readings and discussion board by Sunday, right? So the readings, there's more reading this week. Well, there's more actual individual readings, although they're not very long. And I will show you where those are and where you can get them. So this is the reading. It'll look more like this on where you're. So one of the things you're doing is you're going to this thing called the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives. Okay. Here's one I will go to the week 4 folder to show you where these things are located for us. Okay, so there's the literacy narrative. You're turning that in Tuesday by 11:59. Here's the organizing and argument notes. Here's the assignment sheet. So you're reading those. We're going to get into the discussion and then the required readings. So I have gone ahead and put all the readings, like posted them all here. So instead of trying to retrieve them from these links, you can just find them attached to this required reading for week 4. The Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives. So you're going to go there for the discussion this week. So it's just this, it has everybody's narrative. Like we could submit them, that there's so many of them that you're going to search narratives. So you're going to click on search narratives. When you do this, what I'm thinking, what you want to make sure you do is make sure that you put in digital or technology, because here's what's interesting. The title of this is called the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives, right? That just means that they're keeping literacy narratives in this format, right? Like this, it just means it's an online, basically an online folder for a bunch of literacy narratives. Okay, what we really need though is we want examples of actual digital literacy narratives. So literacy narratives that have something to do with technology, something like that. Here we go. Technology's impact on my literacy, poetic digital literacy, and so on. So you're going to find one of those, and then I will talk about what you're meant to do with them. Okay, so that's the required readings. They're all in the folder for week 4. So the discussion is going to be, you're going to find one of the narratives. Here's the idea that we're working with. Actually, maybe we'll do that. Here's the main concept the new concept that we're dealing with. So it's called literacy as situated social practice. What this means very basically is that we're learning to pay attention to the forces or influences that surround any specific episode of writing or reading. Okay, so when you sit down to write something, where you are, and that means like actual location, but also, you know, stage of life, also relationship stuff, like, so all of those things sort of impact how we write, how we read, and how we understand both of those things. So what we've got here is this short document. One of the readings, this one here, this Hamilton reading, the social context of literacy. There's like 7 pages, I think, that I took. It's a chapter in a book, I believe. and it goes over it and explains what this idea is. And so what I've done is I've just sort of pulled some of the main ideas for this presentation part, right? Um, so to be effective teachers, we need to understand this. Okay, so we need to understand how skills are shaped by the social context, purposes, and relationships within which reading and writing are used. As an example, something as basic as writing down the bare facts of your life is never done in a vacuum, right? So the idea is, even if you're thinking, I'm just going to list the bare facts of my life, the fact that I'm doing it right now at this age in this space will affect how I do that, right? So what we're trying to do is pay attention to these forces that are outside of people, right? That that are bigger than us or whatever, and how they influence us. So, and this goes for anything, right? Um, so I'm writing my facts about myself. Here's examples of how it changes, right? So I'm writing them for a CV or a resume or a diary or an autobiography. Just those, the fact of what I'm doing with the facts are going to make me think about it and do it differently. Other people, maybe they're writing about it as about like information on me for like in my medical file or something like that. So in each situation, the form and process of the writing will be different. Very often, the physical act of writing and the materials used to carry it out will also be different, right? Whether you're writing pen or pencil on a little notebook or on the computer. Um, so different outcomes will hang on the accuracy of the account, how persuasive it is, or whether the spelling and layout are correct. So the whole, again, the main focus is that we're trying to look at the other things that are surrounding us when we're trying to write something. And or read something. Let me try to go a little more. So in other words, literacy is situated and embedded in local activities and can never be pulled out and captured as a separate and unvarying thing. So writing is always connected to the context in which it was made. That's essentially what that means, right? There's no such thing as like pure writing, like, oh, that's pure. Everything is connected to the person who wrote it, what the time they were writing, and so on. This perspective of the contextual and embedded nature of literacy has become known as literacy as situated social practice. It draws on situated theories of learning, which see learning as taking place in day-to-day relationships between people and their environment, whether this is a formal college classroom, a workplace, or a self-help medical group. So situated learning means what we're doing is paying attention to the external forces, right? But we're still writing things, but we're also trying to take into account and start to practice this ability to become aware of what is impacting somebody's writing. And obviously it makes us better readers too, right? So we can read something and we understand sort of the context that this person was writing in, how their age, what were they writing in response to, what was their goal, what were the political situations of the day or the social situations and so on. So that's what this literacy as situated social practice means. So I'm going to try to keep going a little. So this means that literacy, a form of learning, is not a simple set of acquired skills, but the process of making ourselves aware of the elements in any given situation that influence or impact the writing process, right? So you don't just get to be like, here are these skills, check them off like you're a robot and you can do the skills and now you're done writing, like you know how to write or whatever. Instead, it's learning how to do things, but also starting to make yourself become aware of the other things that are external to us that are influencing our writing. Um, we're trying to practice focusing on, analyzing, and discussing the other elements that impact the development of different kinds of literacy, different forms of reading or writing. To do this, we look to the clues within a piece of writing to try to understand what helped to shape the writing, what elements were involved in the production of this particular piece of writing. We also practice shifting our focus to noticing and taking into account the elements that impact our process of reading. Okay, so it's just like I've been saying. What we're trying to do is, so the exercise here is going to be, we're going to look at a piece of writing, or you're going to pick a piece of writing, and you're trying to get in there and find clues as to what are the things that influenced this person, whoever wrote this thing. Okay, I'm going to leave off for there for now. Obviously, this will be available to you, but here's the discussion prompt. So, in her definition of the social practice approach to literacy, Hamilton mentions the cultural, political, economic practices within which the written word is embedded. So, you're going to go to the digital archive, right? Literacy narratives. You're going to find a couple of examples, but what you're looking for is you're trying to find examples that have the clues of the forces that were in play, right? So, for example, they suggest that you look at for mentions of institutions of some sort, right? So if somebody's writing a piece about their digital literacy and it has to do with they were in school at the time, school would be one of those things, one of those external forces shaping them, right? Or hospitals, or so any sort of large institution can play a role in how somebody, in the writing that somebody produces. Economic forces and effects, jobs, salaries, insurance, prices, things like that, those exist. So you're trying to, again, you find one of these digital literacy narratives, and then you're just deciphering it, trying to figure out what are the external forces that that influence this person's writing. Politics and government, voting, taxes, public education, cultural forces, ideas about who is important, about gender, about what's appropriate, beautiful, or meaningful. So you're going to explain how these examples relate to the ideas we are looking at this week. So how do any of these influence the particular literacy experience the person is describing? So a person's going to write their literacy narrative, and you're trying to pick out some of these external forces and explain how they might have influenced the person's writing. Right. A very basic example would be, say, a teacher assigns me something and I write it up. So the fact that I'm writing it for my teacher, means is going to affect the way that I write whatever it is I'm doing, right? Because that's a big influence on me. I want to make sure that I'm doing it and I'm trying to do it the way that they want, and all of that. So that we're just trying to look at it in a less sort of obvious way. So you're going to give two examples. So you're going to quote two examples from the digital literacy narrative. And then you're going to try to explain what are the forces that were in that might have influenced this person and what they wrote about. My very beginning idea. So I found this one. I pulled it just quickly, right? So as an undergrad, okay, so already I know that college is one of the things, right, that is a player here somehow. I'm not even sure how it fits in or whether it's going to matter or not. Then I move on. In 2003, I was a freshman in high school, and I distinctly remember getting my first cell phone. Okay, so even better. So the person's a freshman in high school. So being in high school, that's going to be one of the things that's influencing this writing. And so she goes through the whole friends, people who have smartphones versus people who don't, right? So those are all influences in like her situation that would influence what she says about that situation. Right. So then I had a couple other ones. I could probably do those another time. So what I'm thinking is we stop with this because I'm going to essay number 2 is going to be based on this idea, but this week is really just focused on the discussion board, right? Finding something from the digital archive of literacy narratives, posting your 2 examples, explaining what forces are sort of on the outside or influencing the person's writing, and then I also put a short story in there that I wrote once. It has to do with like just a short story about somebody being aware of themselves as they're reading something, right? Because one of the things that we're doing here is writing and reading, and then this is the beginnings of trying to pay attention to the other factors that exist that influence how we interpret things, read things, and how we write things whenever we write. Okay, so it's going to be reading, and when you read, you might want to take notes, because the essay, as you will see if you read that, is going to be based on the readings for this week, right? So we'll get out of here. So the readings for this week in the week 4 folder, this is just me pulling quoted things out to try to help explain this concept. So these 4 things, right? There's the Hamilton reading, there's how to read a scientific paper and how to seriously read a scientific paper. And then these are the reference ones, right, from the writer's reference, about sort of developing the next subject. So it's like we're putting all of these ideas in, we're trying to reflect on and discuss this concept of socially situated literacy. We're reading these other elements, and like we're going to weave them together in an essay, but not this week. This week we're really just focusing on doing the discussion really, really well. So I do have information about the essay number 2, but I'll go ahead and do that as a separate thing. And again, because there's nothing being assigned for this week for essay 2. So let me know if you have questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and then post this